Joining us now from Wolverhampton is Dr. Eamonn O'Kane, an expert in Northern Irish politics at the University of Wolverhampton. And it has to be said, Dr. O'Kane, that this whole question of the DUP being involved supporting a minority Conservative government is becoming more controversial. Sinn Féin holding a news conference here saying that it is now causing anxiety and fear. Do you think that's overdoing it a bit?
Well, it is genuinely and definitely causing some problems. What the British government are trying to do is to suggest that the two things can be separate, that you can have talks with the DUP about making arrangements for support in Westminster, whilst at the same time having a separate conversation about restoring devolved government to Northern Ireland. And whilst theoretically that might be possible, the suggestion that these two things can be separated to that extent is highly questionable. What they're doing is certainly changing the mood music, and the problem will be that the one will inevitably influence the other. So that's what Sinn Féin are now doing, and it was far from a given that it would be possible to restore devolved government to Northern Ireland anyway. It was always going to be problematic. With these processes in Westminster, it's just become much more.
But wouldn't it be in Sinn Féin's interest to restore government in Northern Ireland, because then the effects of the alliance between the DUP and the Conservatives, if it comes about, would be less?
Well, at one level, there is a logic to that argument, but the problem with that argument is it was the relationship between the DUP and Sinn Féin in Northern Ireland that had become so soured and problematic that led to the collapse in the first place. So the Sinn Féin, who are sceptical about the DUP and elements of their commitment to devolved government, and were anyway very sceptical about Northern Ireland's Secretary of State's role and ability to play an honest broker, will now be even more sceptical. So whether you can actually separate these two things and do a deal. But the other unknown, of course, for Sinn Féin is if they don't do a deal with DUP and restore devolved government back to Northern Ireland, the option B is devolved government will go and you will return to direct rule. And that will now be a direct rule, with the DUP having the ear very closely of the British government, which is not an acceptable or desirable scenario for Sinn Féin either.
Dr. O'Kane, thank you very much indeed for joining us.